Welcome back to Inside Politics. We're talking 2016 presidential politics today with Democrat Larry Woods and Republican Bill Phillips. Let's turn to the Democrats. Their race has, to some degree, been more like a Sunday school picnic than what's been going on the Republican side. But Larry, Hillary Clinton keeps building her delegate lead and her superdelegate support, it seems, every week in these primaries and caucuses, but she can't seem to quite knock out Bernie Sanders. Why not?
Senator Sanders has too much money. He's done a great job raising
from a lot of small
money.
donors.
Mm-hmm. Small donors on the internet, and therefore I don't think there's any way Hillary can deliver a knockout punch to him. I think Bernie Sanders is going to stay in there through basically the last Democratic primary or caucus. I think he'll fold when he gets to the convention. I don't think it'll be a big convention fight. I think the numbers are just overwhelmingly place Hillary Clinton in the lead.
And Bill, because the Democrats do all their delegate allocations on a proportional basis, there are no winner-take-all primaries anywhere, no matter how many votes you get in the state. Sanders probably has an absolute impossible task to be able to catch up. We talked about the Republicans trying to catch Trump. It's even harder for Sanders to do that at this point, although he keeps thinking that somehow he can get to California and do it.
Yeah. What I kind of see is that both parties are having the same problem. You've got a lot of people that are upset. On the Democrat side, it seems to me the young and the upset are going to Bernie because they said Hillary's old news. On the Republican side, we've got the same thing going.
I think that's pretty accurate. I really do.
So, Larry, you think that Sanders' goal at this point, although he keeps saying he thinks he's still going to get the nomination, is to get the convention, have some impact on the Democratic platform, which most people may not even know they still do platforms anymore, what the party's position is on all these different things, and get a really good primetime network kind of appearance to have a speech during the convention to the delegates?
I think Senator Sanders will wind up negotiating for either what you just described, a primetime presentation where he can emphasize the ideological issues he's interested in and should be interested in, or something similar. He's not going to be the vice presidential nominee. He's not in contention, I don't think, with anybody's thinking for anything like that. So I think Bernie is really pushing for a battle of ideas at this point. And I'm sure, like any candidate that's put in this investment, I'm sure on some small level he thinks there's some kind of chance something could happen to give him the nomination, but it's not going to happen.
Bill, will the Sanders supporters, in your mind, coalesce around Hillary Clinton once she becomes the nominee, or is that going to be a problem for the Democrats too?
I would think that they would get behind their party's nominee, those that will stay and actually vote. Now, there's a lot of his support I don't think are general election voters.
Now, Larry, Sanders has always prided himself in his earlier campaigns and now that he doesn't go negative. He doesn't really go after the personalities or the other problems of the other candidates. He runs his own race. Has he therefore given Hillary Clinton a little bit of a pass on this? Is she ready to take what's likely to come? Because the Republicans, if there's one candidate that will unite, maybe not all the Republicans, but some of them this time, is that they don't like Hillary Clinton at all.
Talking to my friends who were active in the Bernie Sanders campaign early on, I have the impression that when Senator Sanders started, he didn't really think he was going to be able to come close to beating Hillary. Now, that's what the internal strategy motivation was, and it really was from his point of view, here's an opportunity to have a national platform to educate people about what's important in my views. But then as he had early success, all that shifted, of course, and all of a sudden he's thinking, I really could get the nomination. I think it's now shifting back again on him, though, both internally and with his supporters.
Bill, the Republicans still think they have an opportunity to win the White House because Hillary Clinton has her problems. There's an investigation still going on about her State Department emails by the Justice Department. There are other things about her that would be considered political baggage. Does that give even Donald Trump a chance to beat her, despite his controversies?
The Clinton name has managed to overcome a lot of negatives in the past, and there's a lot of people that are saying she might do it again. She might continue that tradition. So.
Where are Republicans going to be if they're coming out of their convention divided? Does that mean there's going to be a real effort for a third party by some conservative Republican to form their own party? It'd be hard to get on the ballot this late, but is that where they're headed, or are they just going to stay home or just start out so they don't hurt the down ticket races?
Well, there's rumblings of let's start a third party, but I don't think it'll really get any traction.
Unless there's a walkout at the convention.
Well, Republicans are very refined. We don't like to do walkouts, so, but that's a Democrat part.
True.
The last walkout I can remember in history was 1948, the Dixiecrat walkout, when they wanted to have a plank in they were against the plank in the convention about civil rights, and they left and put their own. But 1948, to get a national ticket put together and on the ballot, was a whole different world than what it is today.
Yeah, different media world, different culture. Hard to compare. I agree.
But Ross Perot did a good bit of it. He didn't get the electoral votes, but he did get. He wound up getting on almost every ballot. But he was already starting, I believe.
Yeah, he walked out without ever going to the convention, so it really amounted to the same thing.
Right.
I think the better comparison is what you mentioned before we went on the air: the 1968 Democratic Convention. Humphrey lost that election in Chicago because all those young Democrats
had fights going on in the hall and outside the halls as well.
Right. Now, I agree, you Republicans are too refined to sleep out there in Grant Park in Chicago or Cleveland, but there's going to be some of that ill feeling, bitterness.
Well, but there may be a long happy hour at the Four Seasons or something. So.
Well, Bill, you ran one of these conventions back in 1988 for George H.W. Bush. Now, that was when he was being nominated for the first time, and it was a Sunday school picnic compared to what's going to be going on in Cleveland. But is there going to be a concern about unhappiness not only in the hall, but Trump's had a lot of demonstrators at his rallies lately. They've now got 2 or 3 months to plan to be in Cleveland. If you were running that convention, would you have concerns about security both on your floor, but also when your delegates going back and forth from the hall?
Well, and you always have a major concern is security of any of the conventions. But the internal strife would add a layer that you would have to prepare for. You also would have to get very serious about multiple ballots and how do you handle that. And then there's the TV shot.
Networks may have to change their idea. I mean, now you do have the cable networks who are ready to probably to do gavel to gavel, but it's been a long time since the major networks did gavel to gavel coverage. Although, when I was younger as a child, that was what you sat and watched. So you were like a lot of people on the floor. You didn't know exactly what was going on, and they'd go away to talk about stuff and have a panel discussion about whatever. But they did cover it gavel to gavel, and they made a big deal out of that.
If I'm making out the NBC, CBS, etc. budget today, I'd be budgeting more money to cover Cleveland. They're going to be fireworks on some level, more so than we've been used to in a couple of decades. Heck, maybe more so than since 1948 or 52. Yeah, I think, and the Trump crowd supporters, the people showing up at the Trump rallies, not the delegates necessarily, but the people, I'm wondering if a lot of them are going to come to Cleveland. One of the frustrations that partly fuels Bernie Sanders, partly fuels Donald Trump, is people feeling like Washington is out of control, not doing what we, the nation, want them to do, and I can't do anything about it. I got no influence, no impact on Washington, but by golly, I can go to Cleveland and make my voice heard. It'll be interesting to see if any of the Trump people wind up taking 5,000 or 10,000 people to Cleveland.
There's still more to talk about 2016 presidential politics. We'll be back to talk to Larry Woods and Bill Phillips about it after this break.